gradually, then suddenly. And it seems like the occurrences that are happening right now in the macro world are trickling over into everything. And I was having a discussion with a friend of mine this morning, Stephen. He talked about, hey, have you taken a look at this documentary, which goes with the 2008 financial crisis? And he said there was a specific part with Bernanke and just how close we were to the ruination of the entire world. And I thought to myself, first of all, I gotta check that out. And the second thing was, I wonder how close we are to an entire banking collapse. So to get to what I'm talking about, this is the actual documentary, and it's pretty good. It's from Vice. It's the untold story of the 2008 financial crisis. And what Bernanke says in this can be summed up in this minute and a half clip. And I want you to, when you listen to this, think about how things are happening or unfolding in the macro environment, which is a mess right now. So take a listen to this.
Hank Paulson and Chairman Bernanke came in. And Chairman Bernanke said to the group, if you don't give Hank Paulson what he needs, within 72 hours, the entire banking system in the United States will fail. And then the world banking system will fail on top of it. One of the most sobering periods I've ever experienced.
Weird. You got to be kidding. I mean, why are we first meeting now? We've got 72 hours.
If anything, I think I might have understated in my predictions how bad things were actually going to get.
The secretary described what they wanted to do. So we've tested many models, and we have what we call our break the glass plan.
We were going to buy troubled assets. Not sure how, but we were going to buy troubled assets.
About every 15 minutes, Majority Leader Reid would say, how much is this going to cost? $100 billion? No. Hank said, no.
We knew it couldn't start with a T. I couldn't ask for $1 trillion. I wasn't going to be unable to get unspecified again. And so the biggest number we thought we could get was $700 billion. And we thought, $500 billion sounds big, but $700 billion, $500 billion, $700 billion, many people don't know the difference. Basically, we wanted it to be as big as we could get without spooking Congress so it blew up on our face.
Yeah, so just listening to that, I mean, you just see how close we were to entire global meltdown. And then that got me thinking, I'm like, well, how is this compared to what's happening right now? We just saw some pretty big banks. We saw Signature and Silvergate and Silicon Valley Bank and Credit Suisse. And now we're seeing other banks. And there was a report out a couple of days ago, close to 190 banks could face Silicon Valley Bank's fate, according to a new study. And if you want to have this broken down for you, quite simply, check out Guy's video in Coin Bureau. I'll link that in the description. So for me, I think things are happening, and it took a long time, but now things are catching up to us. So I can't tell you what to do. I can't give you financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. However, when we take a look at, I always feel like it's a pretty good idea to diversify. So I have a lot of cash, 24% in cash. Some of that is in banks, some of that is on me. 1% is in stables, 5% in DGen, Masterworks, in land and property, and my Amazon business, other businesses, 15% in staking and crypto IRA, and of course, stocks. So not all of these will collapse, but maybe one will. And I don't know which one it is. So for me, I get a little paranoid. So I say, well, I better protect myself in the best way I know how. Now, you are free to do whatever you want to do. This is just what I am doing. And the question that I have actually was, how did we get here? Quite honestly, because everything was going pretty well, but now all of a sudden we have this issue. And if we take a look back, really take a look back, this is Ben's site in the Cryptoverse. I try to steal as much information as I possibly can from his site. You can check it out. Links in the description. But debt to GDP ratio. And when I took a look at this, I'm like, this is a pretty good indicator of what is going on right now. And just so you know, the higher the debt to GDP ratio, the less likely it is the country will pay back its debt, and the higher the risk of others lending to that country. And did you know, here in America, I can't speak for every other country, but our debt to GDP ratio was pretty good, 38% and 67. Then we hit some pretty lows. That's 30%. We never dropped below it, but in 74, in a recession, mind you, we're at 30% debt to GDP. hit another recession, 30, 31. Volcker came out and avoided the Great Depression. Of course, because what are we going to do? We're going to drop some rates during the recession as things come about, and maybe do a little money printing. And then here it goes up. And then we have a little bit of a recession here in the 90s. No big deal. Didn't last too long. Maybe print a little bit of money. And then as economic outcome does pretty good, here we are, debt to GDP, 64%. Well, we can pay some of that back. This is in the 90s. Good old days with Bill Clinton. He actually did a pretty good job. And as we drop down to 54% debt to GDP, unfortunately, a recession hits us, cut and spend. Recession hits us here in the Great Recession. And this is when we really turned the printer back on and didn't stop and just started cutting rates and never really raised them. And we could see the effects of what's going on. Now we have a debt to GDP over 100% here in 2014. It just kind of went off the rails. And of course, nothing like a little pandemic to turn those printers back on. And now we got debt to GDP at 134%. And we couldn't really do too much because right now, today, we are sitting at debt to GDP maybe 120%. We are arguing over the debt ceiling. So what does that mean for crypto and digital assets? Well, I got to tell you, I think some of the old whales were correct. This is from Looking to Bitcoin. You can find this also, link in the description. It's a free site. And whales that have held, not whales, or just, Bitcoin wallets, we'll say, which they probably are doing pretty well if they're holding over 10 years, let's be honest. Over 10 years, we can see right here that as far as 2018, take 10 years back, Bitcoin's created. This is when it starts. And you would think that they would just start selling, but no. And some people say, well, Rob, you don't understand because all those people back here, they lost all their mnemonic phrase. I don't think all of them lost it, but even if they did or didn't, you still got a whopping, as of today, almost 14.5% of all the Bitcoin wallets out there have held Bitcoin more than 10 years. And we can break this down even more. So if we want to take a look at 7 years to 10 years, we can see that here that's around 5%, 5 to 7, 3 year, 5 year, 2 years to 3 years, 1 year to 2, 6 months to 12, 3 months to 6, blah, 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 blah. 1 day to 1 week and 24 hours. You can still see that up here, the majority are people over 10 years holding Bitcoin. And it kind of goes down the line. But that's not the interesting part. It's interesting because I like to see longevity. The interesting part was here, the 1 year holdaways. This is how things have just been held in wallets and how they've been unspent for quite some time. We're at an all-time high, 68%. The next closest time frame was 63% in 2020. Next closest was in 2016. You will see that, of course, during all-time highs, people will start spending Bitcoin. They'll start selling, moving. That's just the nature of the beast. We can see it happen here in 2013, here in 2017, and of course here in 2021, double top as it goes down. But again, we are at all-time highs. And then also, I think people are accumulating quite a bit. Addresses with a balance of 1 Bitcoin or more. That could be 1 Bitcoin, that could be 10, that could be 100, just depends. And those wallets really started to accumulate when the Bitcoin price dropped to around 19, 20, 17,000, somewhere around here. And you can just see that it just went up vertical. And now as the Bitcoin price has raised up, I don't think it's really the price anymore. I think the reason that we're almost at 1 million addresses that hold more than 1 Bitcoin is because of the issues that we're seeing with the banks and the collapse. I don't know about you, but I have gotten a ton of questions and comments from people who are outside of the realm of crypto and digital assets, family included, who are like, what do I do with my money? Because if these banks collapse, what does that mean? I think that's where things are flowing into. And then the next question I get is this a good time to buy Bitcoin? Well, for me personally, I think the worst time is never. But if we take a look at historical risk levels for Bitcoin, you can see that today, as far as the riskiness, it's not super risky. The Bitcoin risk assessment level is 0.48. What does that mean? Well, if we take a look at time and risk bands, this is the majority of the time that Bitcoin is in this band of 0.3 to 0.4. Right now, it's actually increasing, a little bit more risky, 0.4 to 0.5. But around here is a pretty good time, I think, especially over here. On the far left-hand side is when it's less risky, potentially. That's where I like to pick up more on my Bitcoin. But then as we go over here, things start heating up. And when you get to these risk levels, I mean, look at that, 0.9 to 1.0, only 18 days or 80 days from 0.8 to 0.9. That's when things are getting a little overheated. Right now, we're over here. Looks pretty good. And then actually, if we take a look, historical risk levels for other stuff like Ethereum's actually heating up, 0.55. ADA, much farther down. So less risky, 0.2. BNB, all right, 0.4. Solana, less risky as well. So again, I can't show you everything, but that's just something that you can find in Ben's website. I like to see these things and kind of assess how risky things are. So right now, when I talk to family and friends, again, I say, I can't tell you what to do. If I tell you to buy today, it'll probably drop like a stone. But I always tell them, diversify and time is your friend. Anyhow, let me know what you think about that in the comments section. And then just to finish this up real quick, AI. And we'll get back to crypto in a bit, but AI it's fascinating to me. And I think this was really interesting because in a little bit, we're going to talk about how Jeff Booth used AI to ask ChatGPT where things are going. So, but I'll get to that in a second. This is from Cooper, and he talks about how that ChatGPT-4 saved his dog's life. His dog got diagnosed with a tick-borne disease. He had serious anemia. Her condition seemed to improve, but after a few days, things took a turn for the worst. He went back to the veterinarian. They ran some more tests. They couldn't figure it out. He took all that information, all the lab work, stuck it in ChatGPT, and ChatGPT spit out a couple of potential diagnoses. He went to a second veterinarian and goes, look, this is what it says it could be. What do you think about, there's this term, immune-mediated hemolytic anemia. And the veterinarian said, yeah, that's actually could be what it is. Let's run some more blood tests. And that came out positive, gave him the appropriate intervention. Dog is fine. So to me, ChatGPT is not going to replace a vet or a doctor anytime soon. But I find it fascinating that it was able to save that dog's life because the first vet couldn't figure it out. So if you're looking at that, there's a link in the description. You can find ChatGPT. It's free for now. Who knows how much it's going to be in the future, but you can ask her any question. That's something you can't get from like a Google. And what Jeff Booth did, crypto OG, and talks quite frequently about Bitcoin, is he asked ChatGPT a question. He goes, look, where are we going to go in 2035 as it relates to crypto digital assets, Bitcoin, as it relates to AI, central banks, and the potential bank implosion. So he used Midjourney, ChatGPT, 11 Bank Labs to make this video. It's 2 minutes long. I am not going to play it because it's frightening, but there is a way forward and a way out. I am going to link that in the description. It's just called Jeff Booth Scary AI Prediction. You can check it out and go from there. And that concludes that part. And lastly, I just want to say thank you everybody who showed up this week. There's Steve from the San Juan Smokehouse as we walked the shelter dogs again. I'll be leaving Puerto Rico for a couple months, going back to Texas. So I urge everybody to go over there to Amigos de los Animales on Sundays, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Walk the shelter dogs. They appreciate it. You get exercise and everything's good. But that's it for today. So look, I know a little bit long, but I think a lot of good information out there. If you like today's video, give it a thumbs up, like it, consider subscribing. Everything we talk about is time sensitive. So that concludes today. Now we'll get into a little Q&A, go from there. But thanks so much for stopping by. Appreciate it. So let's jump into Q&A.